title. You can't lie to somebody that knows better. I seen it hurt too much. You can say to me whatever. These attacks ain't even clever. All just lust and pride. But who knew those two things could cause such a divide? Such a divide. Such a divide. Here we go again. Fighting a battle we never win. Church versus the church again. Church versus the church again. Here we go again. Fighting a battle we never win. That plank in your eye, friend. That plank in your eye.
Welcome to Church versus the Church podcast. I am your host, Brother Valentine,
and I'm the co-host, Minister Charles, aka MC, and this is Church versus the Church, where we have conversations that we need to have in church.
Of course. And so today's topic is competition and envy/jealousy. I think we're working out what the difference between envy and jealousy is at the moment. And so as far as I'm aware of, envy is when you desire something that's not yours. Covetousness, which we know is a sin, versus jealousy. Jealousy is you being fearful of losing what you have. So, for instance, if you have a jealous boyfriend, they are afraid of losing you. And so they go out their way when somebody looks at you a certain type of way because they think they can lose you. If they envy someone, let's say you're single and you want a particular girlfriend that someone has, that's envy as far as I'm aware of. Any thoughts that you have, or is that making sense?
Yo, I love that because I feel like he gives two sides of the same coin. It's like on one side, I'm jealous because I got the girl, but the dude looking at my girl is envious.
Right, exactly.
I'm with that. I'm with that.
Right, and that creates competition, right? And so, what does jealousy look? Matter of fact, let's do this. Have you ever felt envy or a sense of competing with someone in the church?
Yeah, I didn't know it was gonna go here. I only have one instance of that. So I guess you could say I've had jealousy in the sense like maybe there was something I wanted to do or something I wanted to lead and somebody else was chosen. That really doesn't really bother me too much because maybe they were more qualified, maybe they were prepped ahead of time. I used to do praise and worship. I did a lot of lead singing, and but it's not like I'm mad. It's like, man, I wish that could have been me. It's not, but it could have been. On the envy side of things,
wait, time out. We're not just gonna breeze past the fact that the boy can sing. Okay, we're not gonna breeze past that. So where you look like, I don't know, you look like you might be a baritone or a tenor.
Bro, I don't remember. I don't even remember, bro.
You don't remember? Oh man,
that's a long offline story about how that even happened. But what I will say is there was a time where I wasn't a minister at the time, and I really wanted it. And so at the church I was going to at the time, we had a process that you had to go through, and I started the process. I had my supposed last sit down meeting before I start actually doing ministerial classes, and they rejected me. Sure, I'm gonna talk about why they rejected me. So everything was good. I go to all the services. Saturday was just prayer, Sunday service, Wednesday, and all extra in betweens. I was in choir, I was an usher. I'm doing everything, right? Large church, by the way. And so in my mind, I knew God had called me because he told me so. And which a whole nother story we'll talk about on another pod, I'm sure. That's a good topic, right? Pencil that. But with that being said, everything was good. They asked me a bunch of questions, and they was like, Brother Charles, everything lines up, but there's only one issue. I was like, issue? I'm thinking, bro, I'm spotless. I ain't did nothing wrong. There's like, you inconsistent in your tithing. And I was like, really? And I was, so at the time I had a job, I was working like 40 hours a week, but they changed the rules and policy at the company. And because I wasn't a full-time employee, I had to average no more than 28 hours per week. So
Mm,
here I am working 40. They done dropped me down to 28. So I was making sure my bills stay paid. And what he told me, he's like, man of God, if you had more faith and real faith, you would still continue to give in spite of your lack. Now, that's also a pod for another day.
hmm.
But
For
I don't
sure.
know. For me, it was like, man, like I'm struggling to pay my electric bill right now. And you're telling me that the reason I'm being turned down and put away is because I don't tithe all the time. I was like, I tithe when I got it. But they're like, you shouldn't do
Hmm.
it. You do it all the time because that shows you have real faith. We're definitely gonna do that pod. But so what ended up happening though is I was like, okay. So I kind of walked away. I was like, all right, I need to get my money up so I have more money to give. That way I can become a minister.
Hmm.
Crazy, right? Lo and behold, a brother of mine whom I loved, um, he was doing all manner of sin out here in these streets.
Hmm.
And so much so we had to go. Well, not me, I didn't go, but they had to go get him out some places. The
Hmm.
week after he got pulled out some places, they was like, we gonna make him a minister. I was like, time out.
Mm.
Now, mind you, the church didn't know all the mess he was doing. I only know as a
Mm.
homie, you know what I'm saying? So I'm
Got
over
it.
here and I'm like, wait. Then this was the envy kicked in because it was like, when I tell you, I think that's the first time I was ever mad at God. Because I looked at
Mm.
God like, because in my mind, at that time, I believe like church has a certain flow, a certain way things work. And I thought it was like across
Mm.
the board. And I'm like, he ain't showing up here. He ain't showing up there. He don't do this. He don't do that. I do it. But they were like, well,
Got it.
and all the reasons that they had to justify it was like, well, well, I don't want to get too specific because in case they listen, because we are friends online. But they were like, he has a lot of background in leadership, and I feel like this would be a good move for him. And I'm like, what does having a background in leadership have to do with faithfulness to the
Mm.
Lord?
Yeah.
And you became a minister, and I had
Mm.
to eat that. And so I would sit there, and I'm like, and at that time I had been like 5 years. I had no sex. I literally in my mind like gave my whole life to the Lord. I just ain't had no money. And I'm
Yeah.
like, because I can't, I'm choosing to pay my bills over tithing. That disqualifies me. And so that was my
Mm.
great moment. When I tell you I backslid right after that. I started
Mm.
sleeping. Just my testimony. Like I was like, well, shoot, if he can do it and still, what am I doing all this
Right.
for? Like, what is it for?
Right.
And bruh, I did me. And then, of course,
Mm.
then you have that, "Oh, Jesus, I'm sorry, Lord." And because at some point I realized that serving your local church and serving Jesus, while serving Jesus will lead you to serve your local church, if Jesus isn't the center and circumference and the base and the boundary of why you do it, and if you're doing it for
Mm.
the church, because in my mind, I want to be a minister at the church, not a minister of Jesus Christ. Way
Right.
different. And that, bro, is my long story, but that's my story about I'm not really envious in church a lot because it's I'm serving Christ. But that
Yeah.
because I was turned away
Mm.
and I thought I was doing all the right things and somebody else was accepted, it just led me down a dark path. So that's my story. What about you, bro? What about you? What you got?
I want to touch on something that you said.
Oh, go for it. Let's go.
Okay. So, because something that I heard while you're talking was your your go-to when you are focusing on your relationship with Jesus, it would lead you to be of help to your local church.
Hmm.
But what clicked to me was if your focus is on the local church does not mean you will be of help to Jesus.
Yes. Oh, I did say, yeah. Yeah.
And so, right, because we are people, your local church might have traditions, right, might have certain doctrinal issues, and you really believe that you are moving towards Jesus, but yet your local church is the thing that is stopping you from actually having a strong relationship with Jesus.
Yeah.
And so the spirit of competition to me, um, what it looks like to for me, right? I think that I don't know if I would ever say envy, but I think a lot of times I'll say this: my prime example would be Joseph, right?
Mm.
Joseph had
Mm.
favor with his father, and because he had favor, it created a wedge between him and his brothers.
Right.
And so sometimes leadership in local churches, because they show favoritism to one, whatever the reason, over others, will create a wedge, which festers competition and envy in
Yeah.
people. And they don't mean to do it, just like Jacob didn't mean to do it, but it
Right.
happened,
Right.
right? And because it happened, you can see strife. And so one of the things for me was, excuse me, it was a time period that I was ordained as a minister elect. So you have, for most people, um, it's a two-part thing for ordination, right? Ordination meaning that that the church leadership see the potential of leadership in you,
Mm.
and they go, okay, I'm going to anoint you, right? And we're going to pray, and then there's kind of like a probationary period when they're looking at your character, right? Making sure your character matches up before they give you this title. And so I was in that period, and what I've noticed was my brother in Christ who I brought into the church, um, they respected the anointing that he had at his previous church, and then they ordained him officially, which is completely the one and the two, as
Mm.
a minister. And so he ends up going to other churches and preaching. What I noticed was every time I got called to do something, right? Because of my spiritual father or people that I'm was hanging around with him about, to give clarity, it was a time period, it was just me and him going out preaching. So I wasn't ordained, he was ordained, we were just preaching. So, and we were looking for a church, and he ended up finding one. He ended up leaving that church. I ended up joining this particular church, and he comes with me. So we're so used to being each other's armor bearer.
Mm-hmm.
So when he goes out, cool, fine, right? When I go out, they compared me to him,
Wow. Why?
and they were saying, "You're not like James." Sorry, that's his name. So you're not like this particular brother. And I'm like, I'm not trying to be, but because without like me not being in this church, I'm so used to going, right, without a covering. So I will tell them ahead of time, hey, this this particular church asked me to preach. I'm going to go. I prayed, asked God, God said yes. This is the date that I'm going. Okay, I go. Nobody from the church shows up. When this when my brother goes out, they say we have to support him. I'm like slightly confused because I'm like, wait a
Right.
sec, we have to support him, but you can't support me. But I'm giving you ample enough time to know this is the date that I'm going to be giving my sermonette,
Right.
like eh, everything like that. And so that it seemed like they were trying to force or wedge.
That's
I'm
wild.
not competing against him, but I felt like because they kept on comparing me to him, saying that that's not your particular calling because he was already ordained previously at his previous church, but no one set me down and told me the rules and parameters of me being a minister elect. Um, and so there are there are times where there probably one time for me in particular where I was envious because man, listen, I wanted to be with this sister in the church.
There it is.
She came in, right? The guy that I guess that she saw potential in just got out of a relationship with another sister in the church, and I felt a certain type of way because I was just like in my head, like, dude, like, are you trying to go after all the sisters in the church?
Leave
Like,
me
there's
some.
no right, there's none for the rest of us. And so that's the only real time that I was like, okay, this is getting out of hand. Same church, mind you. And I'm just like, bruh, I don't like the way this feels. I let it go. Their relationship ended a certain type of way because I already knew. And but and then I end up leaving the church. But I didn't leave. Many of us will have justification for leaving a church, but not seeking God in the justification,
Right.
right? And this is, of course, another podcast about when to leave. And so I was in right standing when I left. So I made sure I did all that I could to ask God, God, when is it time? And so that for me is what jealousy, what envy and jealousy and competition could look like, right? The battling when you're so blinded by trying to one up your brother
Hmm.
that you are blinded to your calling, you are blinded to the the parameters of your anointing. You are blinded to the vision that God has for your life because your strong desire is to move. Your strong desire is to be productive. Your strong desire is to to get more.
Right.
And that is the biggest issue that I have seen in 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 churches that um one of the biggest things that I've noticed in the Bible is the spirit of competition.
Hmm.
And it's always between brothers. Always.
Wait, are you talking about? What do you mean?
Okay. Cain and Abel, right? You had Esau and Jacob. You had
Oh, got you.
Joseph and his brothers, right?
Don't don't
You
don't
you
don't forget Leah and Rachel.
Yep, sisters, right? Siblings, right?
Yeah,
And then one of the biggest ones, Saul. Then you have Saul versus David,
for sure.
and then in the New Testament, who you have? You have Jesus versus the Pharisees, the
Oh
Sadducees, the Sanhedrin. Oh, see, I know some big words too, y'all. I know
no,
some big words too.
and to the people, Peter versus Paul.
Yeah.
What I
So,
one thing I was gonna touch on about mine, because I what helped me overcome mine when dealing with another. So it was definitely a heart posture situation when I stopped to think because after he did become ordained and everything about him changed, and I feel like, and
mm,
I was so focused on me and how I felt and how everything was just raw to me, that
Yeah.
somebody reminded me of the concept, the elder brother syndrome. Of course, we know about the prodigal son who came home and,
Yep.
give him my give him my robe, give him the ring, and kill the fatted calf. And the other brother outside, like, what? And
understanding Jesus is the soul fixer. Seems like it's only getting worse for the earth. People thirst for the curse while we church versus church, yeah.
Here we go again, fighting a battle we never win. Church versus the church again. Church versus the church again. Here we go again, fighting a battle we never